Thank you all. Thanks for being part of the session. Myself, Vijay Upreti. Uh, I got a little 27 years of experience in IT. You can see my gray hair. That shows that I'm a little older than all of you, I think. Some of you. Um, I have some little achievement that I have so far, been into IT for some time. I published 2 books. One was when I was working with some ecosystem. I wrote a book on clustering. The other is more of a research study that is more on, it was actually published by Indira Gandhi Open University. And that was one of my chapters more towards like cloud computing in developing nations. So that's a little intro about me, not much I could say. I think this is like anyone. Hello? Yeah, can you hear me well? Am I audible without that? Or do you need mic? I think my voice is very loud on that, but I don't mind. Recording. Can be here. Okay, yeah. Okay, sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I don't know. So I would actually like to have a quick intro around, what is there on the security side of it, why we call something as zero trust architecture kind of a concept, why we need this kind of a technology in place now. I'll start with like quick some background on, and these are all available on internet. There's nothing new that I have to really say, but this is something you will be amazed to see that how things are changing, and the way you start going into the internet, the way you start getting into, say, cloud technologies, you get prone to security threats, right? I think most of you who are part of it would know it very well. You connect to internet and you open the door for anyone to come to your house. So you need to just make sure that, how you protect yourself, right? So this is all about like, how do we have these, to be honest, I don't really narrate all those things, but maybe one of you may be interested, what is that cybersecurity mesh? I just have one definition over here just for all of you to understand. What does this mean? This mainly like, some kind of mesh, which is like, more towards like a combination of app and all devices and then created a security mesh around it. So that is what this is all about. But the interesting part, you will see that there are major costs associated to if you are not really, if you have not taken security as a priority. Most of the organization, if you see, I don't know how many of you really understand well architecture framework. I think those from the architecture background on this cloud or any other domain, they would understand what is called well architecture framework, where they have 5 different towers, like you will have cost, security, performance, and then operational improvement. A lot of areas are like observability, whatever kind of things. Now there are 2 areas there in this web which are more critical for the business, which is like cost and security. Now there are both sides of trade-off on one or other kind of thing, right? So you take care of security, you have to pay extra cost. If you are looking for cost optimization, then you will have to also take care of security at the same time. So that is where like when we talk about something in the well architecture framework, we mainly talk about cost optimization. We never talk something as like you will always reduce the cost. It's going to be optimally utilized, right? That is where we go. I mean, I'm not giving a session on the web, but I was just trying to say that this if you are not really protecting your environment well, this is definitely going to cost you. And there are some numbers here again. These are something taken from Gartner. You can go and check it. But I just wanted you to have this visibility, especially for those who are new to this kind of a, say, technology domain or the security domain. You should be aware why this, security is very important for any organization. And when it comes to, say, cybersecurity, I think these are one of the critical areas that you should be looking at. Now, courtesy Microsoft, I mean, all these, some of the slides that I'm showing here are more from Microsoft, and I just wanted to showcase some of these where these are very critical for you to understand what is there on cybersecurity. So See, there are areas like, how do you define the challenges on the security side for, when you have a cloud computing or when you have your environment into the cloud, right? The very first thing is like you need to define something as like, how do you quantify my security governance kind of thing, right? Because security may have a kind of a positive or may have negative impact. You will be wondering why negative impact. Like everybody would like to have security in place, right? Why could have a negative impact? If you secure environment in a way that nothing can go inside that their environment, then obviously they themselves will be locked to go inside, right? You lock the door, you yourself will not be allowed to go inside. So there has to be a level of trust. So this is where you need to create an environment which just make sure that what level of trust you can create for the organization, otherwise just block for everyone. And that is where the concept of zero trust comes in. You start with a zero, and then you start only opening doors for which are your trustworthy, either from the organization or like those who are working within the organization and all. So it's like cyber risk is hard to quantify because it's very difficult, because for some it may have an impact, some it may not really have much impact at this. Then so but we still try to quantify to say that if you are not doing it, then you may have maybe a impact of XYZ dollars of your cost if you're not really following some standard from the guidelines or security standard standpoint. And then obviously you look for some kind of a mitigation of those security areas and look to see that what can be done as a part of those. The interesting thing that you will find here is doing it wrong is very expensive. You may be looking for hundreds of vendor to just take care of security, but if you are not really optimizing it well, it will really cost you very heavy. So this is something that that comes in. So all this is trying to see that what should be our approach when we really talk something from the cybersecurity perspective, right? We cannot really go blindly to say that I would like to stop these services, I would like to control these services. There has to be a due diligence around it. Optimal kind of security has to be there in place. So coming to another way that Microsoft has shown in this presentation that where are attacks actually coming from, and where do you find that these attacks are kind of inexpensive, kind of heavily expensive. I mean, you see it like some of those numbers which are given here, like either through say DDoS or either through denial of services or workload of or anybody attacks through employee within the customer itself or something like who are literally prone to these kind of security threats. You can see the level of or the extent of cost that may incur to the organization. So indeed, you cannot really define something within the codes, but it may lead to these kind of a cost, right? So here I come with what is there as a part of zero trust, right? And when we talk about zero trust, we start with some zero trust thought processes. That what do we mean by trust itself first, right? We define what we call it as a trust. So we first define it. We say what is there as a part of say so something on defining something as authorization versus authentication kind of a thing. How do we make sure that we are creating a trust that who are the authorized or who are non-authorized kind of people to be accessing my either cloud environment or anything within that domain. Then obviously that going through next on to that, how do we define the privileges or least privileged environment? You cannot randomly create user account those who work on Azure, randomly just giving them ownership level access, contributor level access without no RBAC, without no MFA there and all. You just randomly create something. And then you turn out to be that, maybe after 1 year, there are hundreds of users created. And then you come back, oh man, I need to look for the auditing. Where are those users? Somebody has already left the organization. I still have a big bunch of users created there with highly, and it has happened to some organization in the past. People left. They found their, kind of access is still there on, Azure portal, and that has costed the organization heavily on those. So, and then the last is assumed breach. Always going to happen. The time you get into internet, there are people who are going to keep an eye and keep a tap on what you're doing, keeping every activity to be traced around. So breach are always going to be there. All you need to just make sure how you can minimize it. See, even though we call it a zero trust, but understand our thought process always shows how we can minimize it. It's very difficult, it's very unrealistic to say that I can completely stop it. You have to trust people, right? You have to trust your employee. You have to trust your customers. I cannot completely block everything. But at the same time, we need to look for how we can optimally say govern those breach or define some kind of like a device which are connected or users which are connected and all. So these are something, I'm not sure if you can read the below lines and all. Again, this is something courtesy Microsoft. So the zero trust architecture, now I'll be going a little bit more on the technology side because so far I was mainly towards the generic concept part of it, like, where things are going and what all things are there, how Gartner talks about it, some business jargons, you may show interest, they don't show interest. But coming next to the critical part of it, which is actually going, where are the kind of a guiding principle for your trust? So if you look at, say, your cloud environment, right? And I have another slide that I'll show you after this. You start with the cloud periphery, then go inside and all. And then you'll see that there are different layers of penetration. You can create your security apps at different levels over there. And these are different levels that you see. You can have a security level defined at the identity level, user authentication base. You can define. And what I've done actually, in some cases, like your endpoint and network is combined together. Same way application and data is combined together as a single layer kind of thing. And then obviously like, your infrastructure, which is compute, storage, whatever it is. So you know that right from the security perspective, when we say data in transit and data at rest has to be secure. That's the main thing that everybody understands that fundamental, right? So this is what I have created. This is my own kind of slide that I created. No courtesy anyone else, it's just myself here. So what I did actually, I defined that in a slightly different way. I combined few things and I created a different circle around it. And this is where you will see that how Microsoft comes with different capabilities around how we can bring it to a zero trust architecture level, right? So there are different layers. The very first layer comes on the network side of it. Now, you know that on the networking, if any request is coming, if the web request is coming, you need to make sure you need to have a web application firewall, right? Just to make sure that you can, control it through not just having a firewall, but web application firewall will also ensure that if there are vulnerabilities there or there are some kind of malicious requests which are coming in, and then it can do either auto protection or you can just make it as, it should send as an alert and then you can take action against it. So there are services like you see here, you have a security center, which is, I think everybody knows security center, like, which is now changed to Azure Defender for Cloud, right? With the new terminologies that is used for security center is that. Same way, like if you see here, other services like a network watcher, which is also going to help to see that what different, services are, how the requests are coming and how you can tap those requests and you can keep a, closer eyes on those requests. Same way, like when you define, something like, NSGs or like something on the content delivery network and all these are just making sure how we can make these kind of transition more secure and how we can actually filter them before it can get to the next level. So that is where I started. The first is your network level. And the network periphery will also have a hybrid connectivity, right? So it may have a connection to different cloud providers. It may have a connectivity to on-premise. It may have connectivity to, maybe a VPN connectivity or ExpressRoute connectivity to all the other devices that you connect on. So this is where you will find this, these services actually, which are at the very top level of your network side of your architecture. The next goes is like, to the identity level or to the access layer level, right? And that is the one which mostly or commonly used as a part of your zero trust architecture. So zero trust is coming from that who do I authorize, who do I authenticate? And for that, we have different mechanisms within Microsoft Azure. And because this session is more towards like the Microsoft technologies. I'll be more focused purely into Microsoft services and all. And you know there are multiple ways you can have like authentication control, right? You will have a conditional access policies. You will have, and a condition is associated with, say, MFAs, which is multi-factor authentication. You will have like, password management. You will have like a just-in-time accesses. You may not really want to have the access given to anybody asking for that. Only give access to a given period of time and then go with that. Same way, like, a single sign-on. I think this is very commonly used to have the security protection in place. So that's another thing that comes within the identity and access management. There are many. I mean, the entire RBAC that you read as a part of your access control. This is something that is used to ensure that what level of security, what level of access should be given for any user, either in terms of subscription or as a part of role to the end user. And then coming to the further layer, which is infrastructure layer, where you will have like a compute, you will have storage, and all those kind of different devices. So you will, sorry. So you will have something like, say, you define different policies, right? That's again part of like, policies sometimes get integrated even at the network layer or at your identity layer or at like, compute layer as well. But I put it into, the centralized part of it because that is the policy, is the core of your, say, network or like your, say, zero trust architecture part of it. And then you will see like, say the security protection, having like a recovery vault to make sure that, and then have an encryption within the vault to just make sure that whatever data you're saving, that is secure data. You have like, say, now I think I was talking to actually somebody here. How many of you really know that the traditional way of doing that your monitoring has changed or is expected to be changing now to like AMA, right? Instead of previously you're using MMA, right? Now, the reason why we are going with that to just make it more protective as against what it used to be before. You have much more control. You have much more like filtering of the data. And Azure AMA is nothing but Azure Monitor Agent. Sorry if I'm using acronym which you are not following well. But this is more towards like, say, controlling your sort of the monitoring level for organization needs. Now, again, courtesy Microsoft. So what they are really defining, if you look from the hybrid, infrastructure perspective. So there are like, what are the typical challenges that you take and that you really look for, from the security standpoint. So the one is like limited experience and tool set for securing hybrid infrastructure, and the other is critical risk privilege management kind of a thing. So to address these needs for like, any of those requirements, what Microsoft has come up, and this is where you will see that, one at the very top layer for the hybrid environment, it will be like a security center, which is going to just help, sort of a threat protection and other need from the security standpoint. Then the next level you will find, like from the authorization and accesses perspective, you'll find here that you will have, say, Azure policies, key vault, Azure web, and then Azure, kind of anti-malware, NSGs and ASGs, and then backup and site recoveries, disk encryptions, confidential computing, DDoS attack and all. So these are something which are core, and all those who are working on those, say, zero trust architecture must make sure that whenever you define an architecture, are these aligning or adhering to these standards or not? You can deep down further. You may find this anywhere, not an issue at all. Why I have just kept this as a part of centralized place is this going to help you when you're defining a complete architecture for client delivery, how you can make it like, available for them to see what is there around as a part of their architecture. Then next comes like, from the on-premise security perspective, you will have like, either say Windows Server 2016 security or like OS-based security for like infrastructure-based services around it. If you are having a communication from on-premise to Azure, you can use like, VPN, or you can use Express Route, which is anyway encrypted and secure communication. So those are the things that we really look for as a part of hybrid cloud solution. Obviously, like looking at privilege management, I think those who have worked on identity management part of like, Azure, You understand the importance of having a privilege management, managed identity part of it. This is very core and very critical as far as your access to the environment is concerned. So that's another critical thing that you should be aware of. Then obviously, like, secure deployment life cycle. So another part of, like, say zero trust architecture, which comes as one of the critical part, is the conditional access, which I mentioned before, right? So what is there on conditional access? You don't blindly give an access. You just make sure that the access has to be given to a given device or to the given user based on the requirement. Because most are like your infrastructure is sort of more prone to security threat, mostly because of the devices which are attached to you. Because you find it very difficult sometimes that what are the malicious things can be attached via the devices. So that's why you will see that there are two different risks. One, the risk could be from the user perspective, who are actually accessing the platform, and the other comes from device perspective, where you will have like either the mobile devices that actually help you to not really help, but that actually get to have this kind of malicious attack coming to the environment. But where are the solution coming from? So you'll see that Microsoft Intune, right? I don't know how many of you are really aware of that, how many of you really read about it. Yeah. So say Intune is like a complete application package kind of a security tool for or like services from Microsoft, which actually helps to define those security standards around. Obviously, like you know about like Azure ATP, right? So threat protection part of it. So these are the ones which are just helping to make sure whenever there is an sort of a malicious accessor coming to the system, this ATP kind of services will help to just have those controlled and identified kind of thing. Then what happens next is that you will have, as I said before, the conditional access will always have to be associated with multi-factor authentication, because if you are not really defining something as say dual authentication or like multi-factor authentication, then a conditional access is not going to have much meaning around it. So you need to just make sure that your sort of a conditional accesses are controlled much better with multi-factor authentication perspective. And then comes the other side of it, like so left side are the one which are actually ensuring there are attacks which are coming from the left side. These services are controlling those accesses, and then it allows you to have all those access to the kind of this side of services where you access like say Office 365 or Dynamics 365 or cloud infrastructure, or have like a single kind of a services accesses, or like legacy app accesses, or like you are accessing documentation and all. To get to this layer, conditional access is going to help you to define that how do you protect as a part of zero trust architecture from the access and privileges perspective. So this is going to actually control all these services around it. I think I'm going on and on. Any questions so far from anyone? I want this to be more interactive than just me going and narrating.
Not to disturb you. Continue with the flow of the presentation. So
sorry.
We thought that we will ask questions.
Oh, yeah. Please feel free to raise hand. Not an issue at all. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So one questions from my end. Okay. Sorry.
No.
So there are a couple of points. So basically, you said like at the starting of the session, like we need to assume breach when we design architecture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with the architecture that you've shown, like if I assume a data breach or whatever, there is no. I didn't see a mechanism where there is a recovery flow where I can recover the data back. Is there a backup flow? I was not able to notice that in the presentation, but yeah, the backup and recovery flow is what missing is what I feel.
Yeah, there are slides after that. You will find that. Just have a little more patience. You'll definitely get it.
Okay.
But a very, very good point actually. That so there are two parts to it. See, threats are always going to be happening, and there are always going to be a protection. There is a new concept. I don't know if you know that. There's something called as a vault, this called bunker concept. So this is now evolving very gradually now. So recently I was part of one of the conference where that presented from the hardware perspective, and from DXC we gave actually a solution to one of the client purely from the cloud perspective.
Mhm.
So what is this bunker concept is that if suppose you have like a data center which get impacted or affected, or like you have either physical or maybe something in the cloud get impacted due to some vulnerability or some attack, right? If you have a DR services, what will happen if there is something which has impacted there, immediately get impacted at the side of it. So that's a replicated environment, right? So how do you protect your environment? Now, one is either you recover from your backup, but that may have like, because it depends on your RTO requirement and RPO requirement as well, that how much of that data you can actually get that's recovered from there. That's going to be one point. So how much data you can lose. Or is there another way they can actually secure, and that's what they call it the bunker. So what they do is they actually have whatever the data center they have, they create a parallel to that on a separate environment, and the immediate last snap actually get copied across there. So this is completely isolated environment, but that is protected by any other accesses. So you only use it only for the data transfer, nothing else. No access given to anybody over there except for that. This will get activated only when there is a need for bunker. And at that time, obviously that needs some kind of, say time to recover the services, but your data is protected. Your services are protected.
Right.
So service is more important for you to understand. So these are there. I think you rightly asked that question. I didn't actually bring that bunker concept here, but that is growing very gradually now, and people are asking for this kind of solution from the security.
So actually, the similar kind of solutioning is what we are also proposing, or we are already delivering from Rubrik.
Yeah.
And that is already in the Azure marketplace.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get you.
Rubrik.
Great, wonderful, very good question. Sorry, you had another question. Good one. Okay. Yeah, please.
Like you come up with one slide, the second slide which shows the breach and the cost factor for that.
Let me just go back. Just tell me which one is this one?
No, before. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
So how you come up with this, the cost factors?
It's not me who has come up with that. Okay. But having said that, see, there are some actually, background studies being done to get these numbers. But as I said, don't get too much into the number part of it. Only look that number.
How they calculate? My question is how they calculate that.
How
they calculate that numbers?
How do they calculate, right? I'm sorry, I'm not from Microsoft. I think somebody from Microsoft will have to say that. How do they really come with that number? But at the same time, my point is a little larger than that. Number is good.
Yeah, number is good, but
Yeah.
See, there are different factors involved.
See, it's the same thing, the one number I showed you from Gartner, right? So Gartner will have their own mechanism to define those numbers. So basically what they do is they gather the data, they actually look for like input coming from different sources. So they have their own metrics. See, I think I'll make it very easy for you to understand how Microsoft will do it. I'm definitely not from Microsoft, so I don't take my words as within the codes. Otherwise, I think Microsoft is going to sue me for that. But look at Microsoft is like one of the largest cloud provider for that. That means for the client. That means they have a large client base at the back end of their data center, where they see different kind of threat natures coming from different clients, right? That's going to be point number one. Second, they also refer to these IDCs or Gartner or all other kind of reporting which come, that these are different threats that actually come on an annual basis. Now, it's not like a thumb rule that this is how it is going to be. It is just a number around.
Like, see, generally in cloud computing, any service factor, like any service they sell it, right?
Right.
That is a standard we maintain.
Correct.
Like that, any standard for like breach happen. This is the cost happen. This is the factors are there.
Right.
So that's a
I think it's a good question that how do they really arrive to this kind of a pattern and all. I may actually look for that, but I don't have a handy answer to be honest.
when I saw that.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point because that's why I made it very clear. It's a courtesy Microsoft because I need to adhere to or align to. I'm in the Microsoft office. I need to make sure I adhere to their standard. I don't vouch anything. I don't want to proclaim anything that this is my words and all. Only one slide. I just made sure that I'm presenting from my end. But the message has to go from here. As far as the architects are concerned, where are the security threats that we are really looking for which different areas where the security threats are, being arise from. So if you see that, proxy services or like a denial of services or like a compromised devices, look at like, it's pretty large number. Now, is that really a realistic number? Is that the right number or not? I think someone will have to audit it and see that if somebody has given the right number or not. But we'll have to get somebody from Microsoft. Sorry. Yeah.
So I saw that the zero trust, I'm fine, I can talk.
Oh, okay. No, you can talk, but other cannot listen. So that's fine.
Okay, so the question is like when I've seen the architecture diagram there, it is mentioned that the zero trust is only for the B2B
Right.
and the Azure. Why not B2C?
No, I don't.
Because
think
there are enterprises, right? We are not heavily dependent on the Microsoft service, right? They are like using AWS
Right.
and the Google as well.
Right.
They have the high footprint on the
Right.
on-premise as well. So
Right.
how this zero trust is going to fit there? Because here we are talking about only the Microsoft suites.
Right.
Yeah, when we're talking about the services firewalls, okay, we are dependent on the Microsoft.
Right. Right.
How we can pitch this zero trust for an enterprise customer
Oh,
where
indeed.
there are
Good
different
point.
services, right? So that I'm looking for.
Yeah. No. I think he has a good point. See, so his question, I think you all might have heard him very well, because that's why I put him on to speaker. So basically, he's saying why only limiting right now on the Azure perspective? Why not have a wider enterprise kind of thing? If you saw my slide, right? Obviously, like this is right now more focused on to Azure part of it, being from the Microsoft session and all, but you still have a good point. That's the reason I said, like, if you make this as say Azure centric kind of an environment, you may have interfaces coming from either other cloud services or from this. Now replicate the same thing for any other cloud as well. Take the same kind of a concept there for any other cloud. They may also be prone to the services which are coming in. They will have their parallel services around doing this. So maybe when somebody comes with like, say session in the Google, they will define what different services at different layers which are going to be there. So I just given the name of the services, we're not necessarily going to be the same name for any other kind of, cloud provider. But what you need to understand that the layering thing which I just made, that, how at the very periphery, then go inside and then go to the, say, final loop of your application and data layer. Sorry, I didn't speak much on that. So, because I'm not really much of like application and data person, but I think you know it very well that from the applications are the most prone to any of the security. Not well-written code is the one which is going to lead to any kind of a security threat. That's going to be a very generic statement. But because I mostly come from infrastructure or like this kind of a thing, I can very well go on and speak about these areas. But I think database, application, these are the ones which are the business need. These are the ones which are actually businesses relying on. So we need to have a good control on those. But you are absolutely correct. From the enterprise perspective, we need to have a visibility around not just Azure. We need to have visibility around all different sort of parties connected to it. Now you can replicate this model to any other cloud or any other data center or anywhere kind of, right? Just make sure in the physical data center, you will have much more, I think, who better than Amar can actually talk about it, who have large experience on data center, that the time you enter to your data center, the level of security phases you have to go through. I worked in the Target Corporation, and just because of one small glitch, I don't know how many of you know that, there was a huge penalty that came to Target at that time. Very small glitch. Somebody came, and I think by mistake that was somebody just put some USB drive or something which has a virus, if I'm not wrong. Again, I'm not claiming on those things, but I think something like this has happened. That causes heavily to my Target at that point of time. So these are the things that need to be taken. And now look at it. That was like gone are the days when we used to have this kind of a luxury. You have to go through multiple layers of like a security in the physical data center to get into the core of your like a data center. Looking at rather now they have done most of the things automated. You don't even need a manual intervention there. Like look at Microsoft or like Google Data Center. All robotics, you have your say racks are being laid down there. Cablings are done by itself. Any fault tolerance is taken by itself. So you don't have to do any manual intervention there. Well-defined security in place. But I'm just talking about like, maybe 10 years back or something where we had that. So yeah, any other question before I move? Someone else had also raised hand. Okay, if not, okay, please.
How does the zero trust differentiate between a regular security architecture? Because these are all access control and all is there for years.
Right.
Why?
Very good point. So you heard him, right? So why zero touch makes a difference from regular security technique, right? So the zero trust is just defining how, see, what happens in a regular way, you may only touch upon something in the security that you feel is going to be the right at that point of time, right? From the zero trust perspective, you first say that I don't trust anybody. That's where you start with. In your typical process, on a standard process, you say that I know this guy, I trust this person, and then I allow them. It's the other way around approach. I don't trust anybody. That is what is zero trust. And then I start slowly allowing people to say that these are the one which I should be allowing, either from this access perspective, or from the network devices perspective, or from any other sort of a layer that I just mentioned about, like could be the network layer or an identity layer or the compute layer. What all should be? What should be the security layer within the operating system? What should be security layer within sort of firewall layer and all? So yeah. How far are we on that? Are we good? Okay, fair enough.
One question I have.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, if I'm not going to trust anyone, then how I will distribute my work?
Sorry.
If I'm not going to trust anyone,
Right.
how I will distribute my work?
No, exactly. Good point. So I said you start with no trust, then you allow only people you trust. Right? You cannot work. You are absolutely correct. If I don't trust anybody, you will never be able to run your organization. But your first concept is that I will have a zero trust. And from there onwards, I'll start giving a trust to the people who are like in an organization. You cannot run the organization without any trust. But you need to define a policy how you can control that trust. Say, for example, you are running on the system, right? You may not be part of the core sort of a team as a part of managing those systems, right? Your access has to be just-in-time access. Why you really need to have an access for like entire life of that project and all? You don't need. That is the thing which actually comes as an idea that those who need an access for the given reason, for a given time, only give them access with a control one. That's the only thing it says. So zero trust doesn't mean that you disallow access. Is not possible at all. If that's the concept they're taking it from here, not at all. Zero trust is just ensuring how we can make sure, and that's where I think one of the slides I said, how we can minimize those controls. How we can minimize that people coming into my environment or accessing my application or accessing my systems around it. So we need to control all that. Okay. I think there is a time limitation, so I'll just try to. So this is the one I think one of you asked this question, right? This is again courtesy Microsoft, but that actually gives a larger visibility around what is there on the security architecture as far as Microsoft services are concerned. If you see here, like from the security compliance center is there. So I suggest those who are architects must go to SOC side. They've given all the compliance reporting. I think some of you may be asked by the client that where do they get this SOC reporting, where they can see the compliance reporting, and go to that site. There you will find every compliance reporting that is coming from Microsoft, and you can download it and you can actually make use of this. This is something that I showed you in the previous kind of a slide, that what are different areas from the security standpoint that has to be taken care. From the client side, what different kind of security which are directly clients are accessing those systems from. That's what you can do it. Now on this side, on the conditional access, you can see like Azure identity production. You know that, right? One of the typical question I usually ask in interviews is like, how do you find a difference between, sort of a managed identity versus service principal or using a user accounts and all, right? There are different layers of security. People don't even know that why they're using it. So this is I'm really not going to teach all of you on those technologies, but understand that. And that's what you were saying. I think somebody asked this question that we have this like a standard security in place. But when you say standard security in place, people don't even understand why I'm using the security for. That's why the security is very much required. Understand the need of client requirement and define security based on those requirements. One security standard may not necessarily be the same standard for other requirement. Even within the same client, the security standard that you have defined for production may not be same for your non-production, or the one for one of the application requirement may not really fit into other application requirement. Both have different business needs. One could be directly impacting from the, maybe from the retail side of it, but other could be maybe HR side of it. So all depends on different needs of the security. You will have to define accordingly. So at different layers of, you'll find the security on starting from Office 365 to application layer, database layer and all. So this is pretty nice. You can definitely find all that in Microsoft site, but I've just collated some of the slides for all of you just to make sure these are the ones which are very critical for you to understand the zero trust architecture, and keep a frame in your mind when I talk about zero trust architecture, how you can do the protection starting from network layer to your identity layer, to your compute layer, and then back to your application database layer. And then there's another what different services are there. I'm not really going too much on those kind of things. These are list of services. You can take a note of these things. It's well written over there. So that's not something I can really go more detail or deeper around these services. There are some of those kind of links to help you. I just collated for all of you to just take a quick note around what these services are all about. Where you can, especially I would request all of you to go to this side and this side. These two are very critical from the security perspective, because most of the, especially for those who work as an architect, most of the time client asks for this kind of a requirement. We find it difficult to see that where we can get these compliance need for client requirements. So I suggest you actually look for all these. Rest is you can refer to. It's a little old now, so you can, but it's pretty useful one, 2018, but it's a recorded one. That actually talks the initial concept where the zero trust architecture came from. So this is going to be very helpful for you. The rest is you can get say security intelligence report, actually what different report you get it from Microsoft. So this is all so far I have. Any more questions before I wrap it up? Lalit, how much time do you have? Yeah. So any question, please? Yeah.
So as you said, we start with the closed door, and after that, we start opening doors as we went, let's say applications or users, whoever it may be. And once we start opening those doors, aren't those doors itself kind of a vulnerability? How do you make sure that the access that is given, those are not those itself?
By roles become vulnerable.
Once we start giving access, right? Once we start providing access,
Right.
How do you make sure that the access that is given,
Right.
those itself are not becoming
yes,
a threat?
indeed. Very good point. How do you ensure that you have the access now, right? I think in one of this discussion I was mentioning about that. You have given the access, then what? People leave the organization. You have defined the RBAC role, right? How do you control it? So yes, I think I missed that slide. I have a backup slide there, but because of time constraint, I didn't bring that point. But very good point. We need to bring a policy, which is audit policy, to just make sure that, and that is where the well architecture framework kind of a thing works a lot. I think I did mention about well architecture framework, which has to be run, if not every 6 months, but every 1 year, you must run that. That actually allows you to see security audit around your entire structure. It's not just security like the 5 different towers, but security is one of the critical part of it. I didn't want to extend more onto WAF architecture because that's going to be a different session altogether. I think there must be some session on well architecture framework, if not. So this is something I very much, very good question, as well as very much as a part of, your architecture need, that you must have audit policy in place so that all these, accesses are well controlled. And that's why I always say that, when you see there is a dynamicity on the role, look for like a JIT kind of just-in-time access kind of a thing. Because that helps a lot. You will have access for a given period, and after that, it's fine. You don't have to really keep a tracking on what's happening. I mean, in one of the clients that I'm working right now, even at our level also, they only provide just-in-time access, nothing else. So they have brought in, even within the organization, they have brought this policy. If you need an access system, you will give an access only for 4 hours. Fine, it will be tracked, it will be audited, but you'll be only for that period. Done. After that, you will not be allowed to have an access to the system at all. Well-defined security. Well-defined security
to
for
this point as well,
everything.
like whenever you are creating any architecture, right? So if a front-end architecture application is there, right? There is no need to give the complete access of a database. You can create an endpoint to a database with respect to so that your database gets secure. So these are also which comes under this zero.
Absolutely. Yeah, privileged identity, like, you know, the other thing which I mentioned about, like, say, managed identity, right? So, I mean, why you want to give an access directly through a, say, password authentication? I don't know, use managed identity, as simple as it is. I mean, have service principal, like, you know, something which is much secure than actually having a traditional way of creating a user and then having authentication done and all. So it can be better managed. So I think we are almost in time. So thanks everyone. I don't know how much was that useful for all of you, but I tried to cover as much as I can.
Thank you so much, Vijay, for the wonderful session.